Tuesday, April the 23rd, 2024, and acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. We would like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of our agenda tonight. Just wondering
that the Board of Education of School District Number 71 Comox Valley adopt the April 23rd, 2024 board meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Misak, and thank you for seconding Trustee Howe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? I see all hands, so that's carried. Thank you. Next is board meeting minutes.
The Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley adopt the minutes from the March 12th, 2024 regular public board meeting as presented.
And seconder for that, please, Trustee Elbow. Discussion on the minutes. Right, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. We have no unfinished business. Next is the record of the in-camera meeting, record of the in-camera meetings, March the 12th, 2024, regular in-camera meeting, and April 9th, 2024, closed committee of the whole. And to go faster than my fingers are turning. And so that brings us to the board chair's report. I'll say that we have a very full agenda tonight, so I'm looking forward to a fulsome, exciting conversations on all of the topics for this evening. And we are, I don't know, was it waist deep or shoulder deep in our strategic planning process this week? The next 2 days are writing days with our amazing team of 30 that we've amassed, membership from the district and our parents to get together. We're excited for that group and the work that they're going to do together for all of us and for the future of our district. And then the other half is everything money. It's budget time, it's talk about capital, talk about how we're doing, and I'm looking forward to navigating all of this with you this evening. We do not have any presentations or delegations this evening. And our next open committee of the whole is May the 14th at 5:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. And the topics are the 2024-25 annual operating budget and our strategic plan. And I will now turn it over to our superintendent for his lengthy section of the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Well, we'll see. I would hate to disappoint. Been given 10 minutes, I'll take 20, as a good educator would. No, I'm just excited tonight to share a couple of really exciting findings and then to provide both the board and the public with an update on where we're at with the strategic plan. But I want to share a neat first annual event that's coming up on May the 28th, which is we've had 3 teachers, Matt Zadvorny, Amanda Lang, and Gina Taylor, who've worked in collaboration with the Inclusive Ed Department and have been co-organizing a special event, the first ever SD 71 special track meet for students in grades 3 to 7 with diverse abilities. This unique accessible track meet and field event will include track races, field stations, wheelchair races, and much more. It aims to promote inclusivity, sportsmanship, and fun for all. As we talk about big happenings this week, 3 of our Robotics 71 team are in Dallas, Texas for the Robotics World Championships. Our team secured 3 out of 4 available spots for island teams to compete at the World Championships. So obviously we wish them all the very best of luck. Recently, Mark Isfeld hosted the Comox Valley Schools Model United Nations Conference. Students from across the valley stepped into the shoes of diplomats and debated pressing global issues like sustainable practice practices and election integrity. So a big shout out to all the participants and the organizers for making this event such a success. I wanted to also share a really neat happening that's taking place at Airport Elementary School, where for the rest of the year, every Friday, military members from 19 Wing Comox are working and reading alongside students at Airport Elementary in the library. Military members coordinate with Airport's teacher librarian and are paired with students for reading sessions. So big thank you to 19 Wing Comox for sharing your time with our students. Yesterday was Earth Day, and our schools were filled with events and activities, which I know Ian will be very happy with, and none of them burnt any carbon. So really exciting events. Lake Trail held its 3rd annual Earth Day free clothing store. Students were given first access to the free store before members of the public were allowed in. The event was hosted by Lake Trail Community Education Society and supported by Comox Strathcona Waste Management. So great work to Lake Trail's leadership students in planning and implementing such an awesome event. And on to the strategic plan update. I would like to link where we are right now in the strategic planning process with a story that I just heard recently on CBC Radio. The story featured the work that is happening in many cities to bring again to the surface streams and waterways that have been, through development, diverted underground. The conversation was largely about how the restoration of these hidden urban waterways brings tremendous benefit to communities and the environment. The process of bringing water back above ground is called daylighting. And over the past few months, we have listened to stories, looked at student learning data, read responses to the strategic plan survey, and have had conversations with parents and students that indicate we have work to do to address systemic barriers, gaps, and challenges within our school system. And I wanted to declare this publicly, that we are committed to daylighting the hard-to-hear truths about gaps and areas that we need to improve in. This week, our district, through a collaborative writing team process, will begin the process of daylighting thousands of pieces of data, a collection of stories, as well as exploring research and our own student learning data to support the Board of Education in the creation of a transformative educational plan, which is the keystone of the board's next strategic plan. Every piece of data that has been shared over the past few months will be considered. I'm looking forward to engaging with the writing team tomorrow and Thursday, and anticipate updating the board and public of the work done through that process at our next board meeting. And I would like to thank the many people who took the time to contribute their voice to this process, and I am excited about where this work will lead us.
You get to lead the intro to
Oh.
lead and water report.
Well, I think after the strategic plan report, there would be no better exclamation mark than a presentation from our Director of Operations, Ian Hesselgrave, on the lead and water report. So yes. Ian, we are looking forward to this, edge of our seats. Thank you.
As am I. Yeah, so that on page 7 of the board package is every year you're directed by the Ministry of Education to conduct lead in the water testing at all pre-1990 facilities. This really dates back to the 2016 issue in Northern BC, where elevated levels of lead in a municipal water system, which affected schools. And certainly it is an ongoing issue. We've been dealing with it for many years. We continue to do our testing cycle. And what we have found is that we a number of years ago, have mitigated the issues in an appropriate way. It doesn't mean that every fixture that you come across will actually have lead in the water. What it means is that for us, anywhere that someone will use that source as a drinking source, that's been addressed. And it is to fully redo a school is an insurmountable task. So we've gone down the path of mitigation, such as filtered water fountains and filtered staff, faucets, and all those good things. So I feel that we're in an excellent place with this program, and we're doing the best we can.
Are there any, oh, there are questions. Trustee Aldinger.
Quick one. Thank you. The briefing note mentions a number of times schools built before 1989. How many schools in our district that were built then?
The majority, in fact, yeah, it really is. It is most of our schools. We look at the exceptions as being Isfeld, Valley View, Hugh Bend, Aspen, Brooklyn, Corniche, and Hornby. Really the majority, even if it's early 90s, we tend to test because we don't trust that materials weren't saved. The root of the issue is when you get to an elbow in a pipe, if there was lead used in the solder and water sits in that elbow overnight, it will leach enough to get a measurable test. So really it's a dilution question. So our initial mitigation back in 2016 was principals in the pre-92 schools would come in and run the water for a minute at all of their potential drinking sources, and it clears it out. Much like we should do if we have an old house. You know, is run the water for a minute in the morning, and it generally clears it out. But it is the majority of our schools.
Are there any more questions, comments? So seeing none, looking for a trustee to motion.
Oh, my apologies. That the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley, receive the lead and water report dated April 23rd, 2024, as presented.
Thank you, Trustee McConnell-Keen. Is there a seconder, please? Oh, there's lots of seconders. Vice Chair Leslie. Any further discussion on the report? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is the Gender-Based Violence Working Committee terms of reference. And they were actually submitted by another one of our working committee members, who was Trustee Aldinger. I'm wondering, Shannon, if you want to present the briefing note on the terms of reference.
Chair?
Thank you for being so flexible.
So the Gender-Based Violence Working Committee stems from a motion that was passed in June of 2022 at a public board meeting, specifically to create such a committee. It's taken a while for it to set root, but first step was to create terms of reference, which include to review district policies, administrative procedures, and other practices that relate to gender-based violence, to identify gaps in our district's approach in response to gender-based violence, to identify and develop resources and best practices, and to consult with community-based subject matter experts, and then to make recommendations to the superintendent and the board. Membership in the committee will include 2 trustees, a counselor, principal or vice principal, a teacher, someone from Indigenous education, someone from CUPE, and representation from USAC as well. And we're hoping to meet twice before the end of this year, and then continue to carry on the work in the next school year.
Are there any questions on the briefing note before we move to the recommendations? Seeing none, is there a trustee who would like to share the recommendations?
The Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley received the Gender-Based Violence Working Committee briefing note, and that the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley accept the Gender-Based Violence Committee proposed terms of reference, and that the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley appoint Trustee Aldinger as the Gender-Based Violence Committee Chair.
Thank you, Trustee House. Seconded by Trustee Kathleen. Is there opportunity for discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Very much. All right, back over to the superintendent. The 3-year district calendar online learning schools.
Yeah, thank you, and apologies that you're seeing a 3-year calendar again on the agenda. There is a separate submission required by the ministry for our online programming. So it essentially follows the same outline of holidays and so on as the regular school calendar, but wanted to provide that to trustees to approve prior to submission by the ministry. So you can see the 3-year calendar and the very short briefing note on page 11.
Questions? Seeing none, would like to make a motion? Trustee Mesa.
That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley approve the 2024, 2025, 2025, 2026, and the 2026, 2027 online school calendar as presented.
Seconder? Gee, I think that was almost like a tongue twister. Well, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to page 3 of the agenda. The next item we have us tonight is restricting device usage. And I believe it's our Associate Superintendent, Jay Dixon, who's going to give us the briefing note.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to see, looking around the table, that no one is on their iWatch or their iPhone or other devices.
Right.
I have a document that's linked to in the briefing note for a copy for everybody here. And it's a support document from the Ministry of Education that gets into more detail. But just as a summary, in a recent Deputy Minister bulletin, I believe it was April 12th, school districts were provided that support guide and details of the new provincial order regarding the use of personal devices. Timelines, you'll see, are pretty tight. We received this information and we're required to do this within the next 2.5 months. However, we're fortunate to have a 2022 AP, which is in your package, AP 145, that covers much of what's in the order already. It does need updating, and many of our schools in the past couple of years have already spent some time working to update their school code of conducts. So we believe that we can meet the timeline of the next couple of months. And really, districts and schools are offered, as you'll see in that document, the flexibility to develop an approach that best fits the school community and needs, as long as the intent within the support guide is followed. The document that we've provided, the briefing note, it's a high-level overview of the next 2 months. There's links embedded within it and links to our existing materials, our current district school code of conduct, and more. This is we'll be jumping into with our school principals as early as next week, and they will begin the process of making additions and working with stakeholders around their school code of conducts, and similarly with our district code of conduct. And that's the quick synopsis. There's some great links at the back of that document. It's also there's a link within the briefing note with background information, what is deemed a personal device, and what the provincial order suggests, what changes we are supposed to embed in our code of conduct. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Anything else to add? Let's go to questions from trustees. Okay. I see Trustee McConnell-Keene and Trustee Caton.
Let there be light.
Yeah, I was just going to briefly say thanks for getting on this. I think that one thing that I appreciated that recently came up in a district parent advisory meeting, just that I thought was nice to mention, is the importance of understanding the complexities between the teachers and administrators who require their phone to be with them for their work purposes, but also at all times possible trying to lead by example as well. So I just wanted to sort of bring up that I loved that came up at a DPAC meeting by a parent rep, and I thought what an important part of the learning and knowledge that we do as we share this out to community, to do all that we can to lead by example in our work as well. And thanks for mentioning us doing the same here.
And I think this is societal learning that we're all going through, learning around the etiquette of personal devices, where and when to use them, and modeling it to our youth is key. And that theme, as you'll see in the support guide, there's themes around accessibility, mental health, medical and health needs, equity, and when it's appropriate to use it in the classroom and when not. Thank you.
Trustee Clayton?
So thank you for the report. The question I have is some of the personal devices, phones, and that there is a medical component to some students where they're diabetic or they're electrocardiograms and other incidents. And I understand that process, but I'm wondering what allowances or what processes will be in place for those students and staff members that need their personal device as part of their medical treatment, like check their blood pressure, check their diabetic blood count, and that one there. So I'm just wondering, what do we have in place to support those? I didn't see it in some of the early works that come out. I'm just wondering what do we do to support those families that may need it for a medical support reason?
Excellent question. When we heard much of the social media hype and news around these restrictions, we didn't see the other layers. With these devices are key in supporting people. And the document that I handed out, it's hot off the press. There's a section around medical health needs and how to support individuals that need those devices. And we're required, as part of the new order, to have specific lines in our that address how to support ensuring that people can continue to use those devices. And part of the work will be socializing and educating everybody in the new school year around these new layers to our code of conduct and reviewing it throughout the year as well. Great point.
I have a question. I know that code of conducts at all the high schools will be revisited, and that there is some leeway in terms of each school coming up with their phone use plan. But I'm curious about a district goal in terms of that would unite everybody under an umbrella about a certain non-negotiables. And I know there's nuances. There's people who need their devices, and there's always will be the ability to meet people's needs. But is there going to be something that is held district-wide as opposed to school by school?
Excellent question. I had a discussion about that question this morning with some of the principals. We intend to, and we've already sought some legal advice around adjusting our AP 145 in language as our district umbrella, what our expectations are, and using that as the guidance for each of the schools. So we have some specific areas that must be addressed in each of their school code of conducts. And it's the line in the sand, so to speak, from an entire collective. And we have to work as a collective to support our schools going through this change. Because as you'll see in some of the resource documents linked there, it's an addiction for many. And it's more than just a no, hide your phone. We have to support some through this transition away from always having that phone in your hand. And we're all guilty of that at times. So yes, we want to have overarching district guidance.
Thank you.
I see that we've got the implementation and monitoring there, which I'm really excited to see and really hoping for some positive benefits to our students, their academic performance in general. And I was wondering if we've been mandated to monitor and report on this on the year? Or is this something that our district's going to continue to monitor, that the ministry is requiring us to continue monitoring? Because of course, data from 1 year isn't going to give us as much as if we were looking at the next 3 years and how this is really making an impact in our district. So I was wondering, if that's going to be a requirement or if that's something that we.
Now, number 5 and 6, excellent question. Number 5 and 6 on our plan.
Yes.
Were created in-house. That's our initiative. It's something we wish to do.
Well done, and
So it's, hopefully we'll have opportunities to provide feedback. But if we're going to implement something, it's important from our team's perspective that we follow up to see how that's working, and can we make adjustments along the way. So yes, if we have opportunities to provide feedback, we will. And I'd like to revisit this in a year. Technology's changing quickly.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your guys, the team's initiative, and I think that's fantastic. And I might not be the only one that's curious on the academic performance changes and how, we're refocusing, hopefully.
We're just as curious.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm curious about the reference to researching best practices. Is that looking mostly at just like other school districts' approach to this issue, or are there like best practices in other industries being looked at, or?
We've allowed in the support guide document, there is a research evidence section. I think the second or third page, that goes into reduced screen time at school, equity, accommodations, and access to the internet, with 2 pages of digital literacy kind of support materials. We've been given all this information from the ministry. Now we've got to process it. We've been given our guidelines of how we have to update our codes of conduct. But rather than just updating it, we want to make sure that our principals, our staff, have an opportunity to dissect and go through some of these links and resources. We can all tell someone, no, you can't use that device, but we should know why. We can tell our children, my son, your daughter, how to, not when to use it and how to appropriately use it. So yeah, there's a lot of information. We just recently got it. Our principals will have it in front of them at their next leadership meeting.
Great, thank you. We had a lot that happened with our agenda planning, and I think we might have missed noticing that we didn't have a motion to receive this report. So I'm going to read what I believe the motion should be, and then I saw that Trustee Howe was going to move it. And it would read that the Board of Education of School District number 71, brackets Comox Valley, receive the Provincial Standards for Codes of Conduct Order Update report dated April 23rd, 2024, as presented. So thank you, Trustee Howe. And if there's the seconder, Trustee McConnell-Keene, thank you. Any further discussion on this important and path of tight deadline filled item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, so it's carried. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the Secretary Treasurer, who now it's her turn. I have a big portion of the remainder of your turn.
Thank you. If I can take you to page 23 of your agenda package, and we will be talking about our capital plan bylaw. So just as a bit of a background, as the board is aware, a capital bylaw is required under section 143 of the School Act. Essentially, it's a non-financial bylaw in nature, and only one bylaw is required for all the capital projects that have been approved by the ministry. And then once that bylaw is adopted, it authorizes the Secretary Treasurer to execute project and funding agreements related to the expenditures contemplated by the capital plan. The cycle consists of lots of preparation on behalf of Ian and his team. And it starts in the spring with major capital program submissions due on June 30th and minor capital program submissions due on June 30th. During that period, there's a lot of communication and collaboration that occurs with our facilities department and the capital branch. And the Ministry of Education and Childcare provide districts with a 5-year capital plan intake spreadsheet and capital plan instructions in early spring. For example, we are in the spring right now, and while we're talking about approving the 24-25 capital plan bylaw, Ian and his team are already starting that submission for the 25-26 capital plan submission intake process. In the briefing note, it goes on to describe the different categories of minor capital and major capital that are in the capital plan. And then other programs include our annual facilities grant and our building envelope program. But before submitting the 5-year capital plan, the board has to approve the capital plan, and they have to do so by resolution, which the board did back in September of 2023. So it's a reminder, and there's a number of attachments to the briefing note that will remind you that you went through that process, right? You approved the capital plan that had all of our wishes and hopes and dreams for capital projects. You approved it by board resolution. The ministry has come back and they've said, this is what we will approve after considering all 60 school districts and the money that they have to fund these projects. And again, back to the bylaw, this is what we're trying to do this evening so that we can move forward. Are there any questions about that? Maybe just some discussion? Nope, okay. You're making things really easy, or you just want to get. Okay, so because we are doing a bylaw in one evening, if that's our intention, which it is, the board first has to agree that they're going to do all 3 readings of the capital bylaw in one meeting, and that has to be passed unanimously, and then we can go on to do the motions related to approving the capital bylaw, which do not have to be unanimous, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then I would recommend that the board move through that process. Let's go back to the agenda package, page 3.
I'm happy to make the motion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to make the motion.
Okay, great.
And then just before we get there, so we're doing a bit of a newer process for our board tonight. It's not a new process for boards of education, but it's a new process for our board. And so if the board unanimously passes the motion for all 3 readings, then what would happen is the first trustee would read the motion regarding the bylaw and then say read for the first time. And then we would go through that process. Then there would be another trustee read that same section again and say read for a second time. And there'd be the opportunity for questions and discussion and all the things that go with a motion or a bylaw. And then if we are successfully reach that point, then we would read it for the 3rd time. It's just different. And we're gonna walk through this new way together for the first time. And so Trustee Howe, you had raised your hand. to move the first motion.
Sure, I'm happy to motion that the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley, give all three readings of the capital bylaw number 2024-25/CPSD 71/01 in one meeting.
All those in favor? It needs to be unanimous if we are going to do all three.
Did we do a seconder?
I think Chelsea did a second.
That was Chelsea, thank you. Trustee McConnell-Keen, thank you. I got ahead of myself. So, thank you. All those in favor, sorry if we could do that again. Thank you very much. That's unanimously carried, thank you. And now is there a trustee who would like to do the first reading? Vice Chair Leslie?
That the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt the 2024-2025 capital bylaw cited as School District 71, Comox Valley capital bylaw number 2024-25 CPSD 71-01, being a bylaw associated with the 2024-25 capital plan as identified in the capital plan response letter dated March 15th, 2024, issued by the Capital Management Branch, Ministry of Education and Childcare. Is there a seconder? Oh, I gotta say read for the first time this 23rd day of April, 2024.
Now, trustee Aldinger, will you still second it? Wonderful. Is there any discussion? I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? None? That's carried. Thank you. And I think trustee Masak had their hand up to do second round.
Second round, that the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt the 2024-25 capital bylaw cited as School District Number 71, Comox Valley capital bylaw number 2024-2025 CPSD 71-01, being a bylaw associated with the 2024-2025 capital plan as identified in the capital plan response letter dated March 15th, 2024, issued by the Capital Management Branch, Ministry of Education and Childcare, read for a second time on the 23rd day of April 2024.
Wonderful. Their seconder, that's trustee McConnell-Keen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. And who would like to raise their hand? Thank you. Thank you, trustee Aldinger.
The Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt the 2024-2025 capital bylaw cited as School District Number 71, Comox Valley, capital bylaw number 2024-25 CPSD 71-01, being a bylaw associated with the 2024-25 capital plan as identified in the capital plan response letter dated March 15, 2024, issued by the Capital Management Branch, Ministry of Education and Childcare, read for a third time this 23rd day of April, 2024.
Thank you very much. And there's a seconder for that.
And adopted.
Thank you. Seconder, sorry. Trustee Howe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried? All right. And next, the capital fund update.
All right, so on page 50 of your agenda is a capital plan update of our projects. And essentially it lists our local capital projects, also our bylaw capital projects, the budget expenditures to March 31st, what the variance is, and if there are any specific questions related to those projects, I would defer to Director of Operations Hesselgrave, as he will have far more detailed knowledge of the status of these projects. And it would be my understanding that we would be expecting to expend the full budget by the end of the year.
Thanks very much. I'm just seeking any curiosities from the trustees. don't see any. Just checking to see if everybody was some specific thing on their mind. So
Just more appreciation for Mr. Hasselgrave and all of his hard work on all these documents to keep us up to speed.
yes, thank you, trustee. All right, seeing no questions for either our secretary treasurer or the director of operations, for trustee to Vice Chair Leslie.
That the Board of Education, School District 71 Comox Valley, received the capital fund update dated April 23rd, 2024 as presented.
Trustee Mesa. Last chance for questions. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Right. Now we're moving on to the 2024-25 annual facility grant, AMG spending plan. By one of the.
Okay, thank you. It's on page 51 of your board package. And I will apologize that we do not have the Excel spreadsheet in there. That is the submission that goes into the MyCaps program. And there's a little bit of background that kind of fills that in, is that we begin the process around collating a list of projects for annual facility grant, which are really intended to preserve and maintain the life of our schools for projects that are really under $500,000 in November. And we really work hard to get to the place now. We have discussions with principals, with all our trade staff, amongst our management team, and really by our reviews of our maintenance database. But what we don't get is the number from the ministry. So we didn't get the actual bottom line 2.210348 till about 5 days ago. So what we do is we come up with a list that's big, somewhere around $2.5 million worth of work, because we're ever hopeful. And then we get to a point where we prune. And so we, as soon as we got that number, we sat and we did our pruning to get to a really good list of projects that are on here. We always spend approximately 20 to 25% on roofing. Really need to keep the water out of these buildings. And then other monies on cladding and windows, again, to that end. And then the rest are split amongst the system in a disciplined way to hit key problem areas. I think we have a good spending plan. It's a lot of work now to get into execution of that, which will be done, a lot of it this summer, then through to the fall. But we have, I have many excerpts in here of the work we're going to do. Exciting stuff like fire panels and septic pumps and boiler replacements and things. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
I'm just watching.
I have one curiosity. Just because the attachment isn't here, is it safe to kind of say that like your priority items or like higher ticket items are at the top and then it kind of works down the list?
Mm-hmm. There's very few items that will be on the spreadsheet that aren't actually on the briefing notes.
Yeah.
We have to translate all of our, we have a major spreadsheet that breaks everything down by trade, and we have to translate that into one from the ministry. It'll be very, very similar to this.
Yeah. I appreciate this document. I don't want the big spreadsheet. Thank you, Ian.
I love the big spreadsheet, I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
I do. I have to ask him a question. Hello. How many years in? I asked you questions of me. Seriously, I have a question regarding installing screens in our elementary school. Because one of the questions I have is we're talking about installing playground equipment and screens and stuff. Are they accessible to all students? And what process is the district looking at to ensure that whatever new playgrounds or swings or anything that we install within our school district for students, those students with accessibility, like with their walkers or wheelchairs or something like that, are able to participate? And I'm wondering, is that captured in this funding or is that something that's separate?
No, it's separate. So it's a good trust. It's a really good question that gets to the heart of what we're doing around our playgrounds, is that all the new playground installations we put in are accessible. When we do, the swings at Arden are in many respects a side project that we do at a lot of different schools where a PAC fundraises to purchase swing sets to install at their schools, because there were swings at probably all of the schools up until about year 2000, and then many were pulled out because they were incorrectly installed. And we've begun over the years to reinstall them because they're a very popular play item. Many of schools will purchase them, and then we will do the installation of them as a joint project. Keeping in mind that to make the swing set fully accessible is a $20,000 uplift, is that we create the framework to turn it into an accessible one with the notion that we can further raise for that. But the funding that we get to do accessible playgrounds, like we did at Denman last year and at Hornby, and we're doing at Valley View this summer, is we just apportion probably half of the playground to ensure that it meets the needs of all students.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if there's a trustee, or do you have another question? Okay, there you go. Not another, sorry. Do you have a question?
Overall, I'm curious about the roof replacement at Lake Trail. That seems to be a brand new school, and
There's the school's about 90% new. So the interesting thing about that project was there was a couple of options on the table. One was to keep the old rectangle that was in place and just seismically upgrade the existing box without making any changes. The solution that we preferred was to keep the gymnasium, the library, and 2 special education spaces, or inclusive education spaces, that were part of a 1999 refit of the school. So those probably 5 spaces were saved as an anchor for the new school, which was built off of those to the back. And so there was one section of roof that was back to 1999, and that was the section over the inclusive ed and library portion. And we just didn't have it in the budget when we did the rest of the school to complete that. So now it's our last piece because we have the old connecting to the new. So we wanted to get that one done. We'd hoped to do it with a little bit of leftover funding, and we just quite couldn't get there. So it's a reasonable ask.
Can I ask also about environmental remediation and improvements at Huband and Courtney Elementary?
Yeah, really good ones. In fact, Huband Elementary, we are well underway with that, and it's down the spirit of the trampled forest where the kids play. So like the work that was done around École Puntledge and at Valley View this spring, is that we've taken a number of trees and we close them in with split rail fence, put new soils in and plant, and it's all with the kids there and present and being participants in that. And our work at Courtney L continues around tree planting. If you look into the environmental assessment that was done district-wide, Courtney L was described as having basically no environmental footprint. It was because there was, it was a rural school or an urban school with very few trees. So we've worked really hard over the last 3 years, and we planted about 40 or 50 trees, and our goal is to ring the entire school with trees. So in the interconnecting laneway between 16th and about 11th, there's a piece, a long bit of the school fence line, and we're starting to get trees all down that fence line now. And they'll eventually, we think if we pick away at it for the next 8 or 10 years, we'll have that school in quite a beautiful place. Yeah. Yeah.
Trustee McConnell-King, did you have your hand raised for a question or to move the motion?
I also had the inquiry about Lake Trail, so we're all good. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, wondering if there is a trustee that can move the motion.
Sure. That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley received the 2024-25 annual facility grant spending plan briefing note dated April 23rd, 2024 as information.
Seconder is Vice Chair Leslie. As there is no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, Director Castlegrave, we've we believe this may be your last official meeting with us.
It is my last official meeting.
And we wanted to take this opportunity as a Board of Education to thank you for the incredible work that you've done over, I believe, the 12 years that you've been with us. The creative, innovative, thoughtful approach that you have taken to the work, centering students in the work that you do. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that there are many ways to say thank you. We have found a way to say thank you to you tonight that combines the two. You.
You even spelled it correctly, that's fantastic.
So thank you. I don't know if everybody's got theirs the right way.
But I think so. We're thank you, Ian.
If I could get you, if you didn't, snap a photo with you. And somehow get Ian in it.
Ian,
They would, that would be great. There may be some trustees who may have something that they want to say.
Not really, I should be right beside Janice. We spent so long together, you know.
Okay.
Okay, can you get all of us?
1, 2, a bit. Okay, hold on a second.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Thank you.
As Ian said, I've had the pleasure of being on the Board of Education when Ian arrived. When Ian first came to our district, we were in funding protection. We were in enrollment. We went through a period of transition with the Ministry of Education decided to freeze all annual facilities grants and left us hardly any money to do the work that was needed done to ensure that our schools were not only safe, but our students, but our staff. Ian has brought together an amazing team of individuals in this district that has always put students first. 4 o'clock in the morning, we're all sleeping. He's out in his vehicle, checking to ensure that all our schools and our roads are safe opening. And I think the one thing I'll remember, Ian, of you the most is what you did at GP Vanier. For those of you who don't know, years ago, GP Vanier had that seismic little trip from the ministry, and they looked at it, and GP Vanier has the band room at the back, and there's this little, whatever that building was, I'm not sure what it was called, but it was seismically unsafe to the tune of $1.2 million. And Ian goes, no. We want more than the $1.2 million. And through your magic and your innovation, and I remember the day that you went and took bits and pieces of those lead pipes out of the walls of Vanier and bits and pieces of the wire and those cinder blocks that were disintegrating, and he marched down to the Ministry of Education and the Treasury Office, plunked them on the table, and $34.5 million later, we had Vanier. That is there because of you. And I also look at Lake Trail, and our students and our staff are safer and in a better place. I know that you're not leaving us permanently. You're coming back once in a while, but I would like to have 12 years I've worked with you on the Board of Education, Ian. I've never met a more integral, honorable person yourself that always puts students first. And thank you again. I really appreciate the time we were together on the board.
Thanks, Janice, appreciate that.
Is there any trustee that wants to try to top that? Or add to it?
On behalf of all of us, that.
And when we know that we're not really saying goodbye, we know that we're saying so long for now. And we look forward to, we look forward to you looking forward to your next adventures.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd just like to say I really, I feel such gratitude because I came in from aviation and aviation operations, and it was a bit of a shift, you know, and as I said to Jeremy early on, there's a lot of talk of feelings, and, you know, it was, but I think what I found was that there was such a community that is looking to do the right thing. And, and then that community, and it was Sherry Elwood, who was the superintendent of the day, who hired me, gave me the room to roam. And I think that was what I appreciated so much. And, through that, you really, if we're all kind of pointing in the right direction, there's amazing things that can be done. And I just always felt that support and the folks around me that I've learned absolutely so much from, and I mean, to be able to work with Candace and others for so many years, it's just a gift, and I just feel that incredible gratitude of what I got to, glean from everybody who's been in this room, because they're all there for the right reasons, and so it's inspiring. And I'm super thankful for the opportunity I had. And it's time to have a few mornings aren't quite so early. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So that was a nice break as we move into everything money.
So on page 53 of the agenda package is our quarterly finance report briefing note. And what we'll share is that at the February regular board meeting, the board approved the 2023-24 amended annual budget, which was prepared in accordance with the ministry guidelines and instructions. This includes budgets for the operating funds, special purpose funds, and the capital fund. The amended annual budget projected at that time a shortfall of around $387,000, which was at that time recommended we would cover through the prior year's unrestricted operating surplus. The third quarterly projections are now expecting us to have a surplus of $1.9 million compared to at that time. And if you take a look at the financial statement that's been provided to you on page 54, for the most part, there was a large difference in revenues as a result of the February online learning enrollment count increase and adjustments to the February inclusive education enrollment. And we also have a May count with regards to online learning that we will be seeing probably additional enrollment there. And the other items that are worthy of noting is that there is a significant underspend in expenses with regards to education assistance. And that is in large part due to both employees being on leave, but just the daily number of unfilled EA positions. So I would say those are the most significant changes that are worth noting. You have the other notes and the financial statement with you. But that it's positive to see that we are in a $1.9 million surplus position as opposed to where we were at in February.
Thank you. Wondering if the trustees have any questions regarding the Q3 report? Trustee Arlington?
I'm looking at the salaries of staff who aren't EAs. Are we having some of the same difficulties in filling positions and that, or have we over budgeted in the past and not needed the additional positions?
I am going to take a look and ask if our Director of Finance, Hilton, could respond to that, but I would imagine for the most part that would be the case.
Correct. With support staff as an example, we have had a number of staff in our maintenance department as an example on leave. Many times these positions, there's no replacement, so there are not people to cover those leaves that have taken place, which is why we see the variances. So actually this year, there isn't much in the way of unfilled positions. It's simply people on leave that have not been replaced.
That would be with the exception, though, again, to the EAs where we're having those
Correct.
And hopefully that answers your question, but as Candace is answering this question, I just wanted to express a great deal of thanks to both her and to our Assistant Secretary Treasurer Nelson for the work that they have done in pulling this together, along with everything else related to the budget at this time. They've had quite a heavy workload.
One question, if there's an answer available. The one item under expenses for salaries is the teachers. And if I read it correctly, it's an overspend. Is there a one simple answer, or is it aligned with the other answers?
I'll make an attempt at it. I am waiting on some confirmation of some staffing information from our HR team. It was my understanding that all our teaching positions were filled this year. So a reason that this line item perhaps is over what was budgeted as part of our amended would be the simple fact that we budget for teacher salaries on an average. We could be hiring teachers at, say, top of grid, so we might be paying more staff at a higher level on the grid, as well as our enrollment is increasing at locations, as an example, NIDES. If we are releasing and adding more staff to cover off that added student enrollment, we're going to see our teacher staffing costs exceed what was in the budget originally.
So not seeing any other hands raised. I'm looking for trustee to make a motion. Trustee Mesa?
That the Board of Education of School District Number 71 Comox Valley receive the Board of Finance report dated April 23rd, 2024 as presented.
Seconder? Chair Lustig? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next is the preliminary operating grant.
On page 56 of the agenda package, we have a briefing note for you. And so it's an update with regards to the 2024-25 preliminary operating grants as announced by ministry in March. And while we do see an increase in revenue of about $4.7 million, it should be noted that these additional funds will be used to fund cost pressures related to inflation and that additional growth. So at this point, we don't anticipate that there would be any remaining funds that could be directed towards new initiatives without reducing existing service levels. Therefore, staff are likely to be working towards what we would call a rollover budget or a status quo budget as we continue to move through the next month. That's just our initial look at things. And it's actually interesting that today there was a zone meeting, and what we're hearing from other districts is that there are similar situations. Either there are the odd one that have, more of a deficit where they need to be looking at things, or surplus, but it seems to be a lot of districts that are rolling over budgets or looking at that status quo. Again, going back to inflation and cost pressures that school districts are facing. To give you a little bit more detail, and as noted in the package, student enrollment projections based on our projection software that we use, like Verigar, are indicating that we should have an additional 182 students. But that's another number that we need to be cautious with, because some of our local knowledge is saying that that might not be materialized in full. And so our staffing team, finance team, our education team are constantly monitoring that now as we continue to move through the year and into September. But if that's the case, of course, those preliminary operating grant revenue that we are looking at would be lower. It would be adjusted for the lower student enrollment. What else do I want to share? I just want to highlight that the ministry has increased the per pupil FTE rate to offset the costs of negotiated salary and benefit increases for teachers and QP support staff, excluding cost of living increases. That said, we've been told that will be funded. We just actually don't have official announcement or confirmation, correct? Yeah. So next steps, a reminder that the board must pass and approve and adopt an annual budget bylaw by June 30th for the 2024-2025 school year. And our budget timelines show that we are going to go into a consultation period. We will be looking to our manager of communications to have a page on our website related to budget where we will share information and also look for feedback from the public. And staff are working hard in the meantime on staffing and on identifying more cost pressures and efficiencies. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And it'll be at our meeting on the 14th that we will be able to provide some of that feedback to you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from trustees? We'll start with Trustee Caton.
Thank you for the report. I just want to go back to the projections and looking at the influx of students that are projecting. And I guess the one area I'm looking at, I'm not sure who that one is, the 250 family-friendly unit of townhouses and condominiums and apartments being built down the bottom by the Superstore area. And there's a couple of other areas in that one there. I'm wondering, through those projections, there's a few clusters of these major apartment builds that are hopefully going to be low-income family friendly. I'm wondering is that going to partition all that one there? Do you have any idea whether or not those hope energy families are actually, because if you look at 250 apartments and at least one child, there's 250 kids. I'm kind of like, when you look at that in perspective, but that will definitely have an impact on the cost pressures of a number of the schools around that area and the system itself. And I'm wondering how far in projections we're looking at the influx of families in certain areas, in certain catchment areas within our district, and the impact it will have, because I know portable cost comes out of operational and that information. So I'm just wondering how that would be looking at our budget end, because there's really not much there to play with, from my understanding.
Yeah, and the 182 students that are being projected would take into account any of those local developments that are underway. And I'm not familiar with that one or how quickly they may be up and like filling with families. But I'm wondering if our Director of Operations, Husselgrave, could share a little bit more about the actual projections that would have been done prior to my start here.
There's two pieces to the projections. We use the Beauregard information that you cite, which is a national firm that does school age projections. Beauregard tends to be very good in the short term, and they push out 5 years, but their sweet spot is in that kind of 0 to 3, 4, 5 years. The second piece that we use for calculating enrollment is called housing-based, and that is where we look and see what are all the future developments, where do all the kids presently live, and we put the dot map over the style of house they're in, and we get a ratio that says for every 100 single family homes in this particular community, it generates this many kids. So when we project ahead that we're putting in single family homes or apartment blocks or others, we have a sort of a sense of what we anticipate the student numbers to be. And that those numbers tend to be much more efficient in the longer term, right? They're really steady there. So we actually make this ourselves. We kind of integrate the two pieces together to come up with our projections. And so the things like the housing projects you cite that are in and around the superstore, where there's 3 major complexes there, and one is now really starting to populate with families, we're just seeing the enrollments coming in. And so I think we're getting, we'll have better sense of our numbers. But I think our look between 0 and 10 years is quite good. And we are going to, in the fall, do a serious revisit of our numbers where we'll actually look, the projections we made, what did our September counts, how did they relate to those projections, and how do we see the development figures and the fine tuning of those numbers. And we're going to try to get the firm that does our housing-based projections to do some of their own interpretation on the short term. So we know it's because for this district, space is just such a key issue that we're working really hard to fine tune the projections. I know that's long-winded, but there's the 2 methods, and we're going to do a really deep dive into it in the fall to confirm that we're on the right path. It should again lay out our numbers through to 2032, which is a scary thought. That seems a long way off, but it's a bit of a blink, really, in terms of planning for facilities.
And then again, we take those numbers and then we kind of fact check, like speaking with principals and asking, this is what you're seeing happening in your community. Do you stick? So a lot goes into the development.
Any other questions? I just want to thank everybody who had a part in creating this fulsome briefing note with all of the information. Every time I see one, it starts to make a little more sense. And so I really appreciated how this one was laid out too. Looking for to receive the.
Sure. That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley received the preliminary operating grant briefing note dated April 23, 2024 as presented. Thank you.
You like that?
Yeah, it was a lot easier. It's a lot easier for me to read with the lights on.
Seconded by
Aging myself.
Colonel Keane. If there are no further questions or curiosities or thoughts, all those in favor? Down, opposed? Carried? Thank you. Great, so we're moving on to the board standing committee report section of our agenda. 67 is the open committee of the whole board report for the meeting that was held on April the 9th. For a motion, trustee McConnell.
That the Board of Education, School District 71, Comox Valley received the Open Committee of the Whole Board report dated April 9th, 2024, as presented.
A second. Trustee Howe. If there are no questions, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we have one item under board business. It is the trustee report for the Indigenous Education Council. Vice Chair Leslie.
Well, we had a really significant meeting on April 11th at Airport Elementary School, and it was fabulous. We were in the Indigenous Education room, sitting in a circle on our stools, and it was very wonderful to have students come in and share with us why the room and the space and their wonderful Indigenous support worker, who is Andrea Nata, what she meant to the children and how important this space was. So it was lovely to hear from the children. We didn't know at the time that Andrea had been on a Canadian cooking show, and she had brought us amazing, delicious treats that we could eat. So it was quite a wonderful meeting. Some really on the back, as you can read, I've listed important dates of up and coming gatherings for the IEC and Indigenous Education Council and community. Thank you.
Thank you. There is comments. It is 8:18. it is now the opportunity for the public question period to the board related to items on the agenda. And as somebody looks to see if there are any questions online, we'll turn to our in-person public to see if there are any questions tonight. Seeing no hands raised and a lot of shaking of heads, and just giving our team a minute to look, to see if there are any. Anything you'd like to share? If they have any questions?
No, there's nothing. It's
Okay, all right, excellent, you were saved. Saved. All right, so moving to agenda item number 14. Would like to move adjournment. Vice Chair Leslie.
That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley adjourn this meeting.
Ranger. Ranger. All those in favor? Yes, that's carried. Please adjourn.